is the number. That's how you get in touch with us if you want to join the show. Of course, your input is very, very important to us. So we want to hear what's on your mind. Of course, we always have a lot of stuff to talk about today. Robert Webb is out. Hey, Jackie, good afternoon. Thanks for joining the show. Want to remind you to download the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And for some reason, if you go out to your platform and it's not there, then request it. Okay? Just do that. All right? So tell you what we want to do here. We want to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll jump into the show and we'll also jump into some black facts. You know what I'm saying?
Furniture Depot is your back-to-school headquarters. All college students, fraternities, and sororities get a two-piece living room set for only $3.99, or take advantage of our four-piece living room special, which includes sofa, love seat, chair, and ottoman, for only $5.99. Quantities are limited. Or what about an extra thick queen-size mattress, full or queen-size, for only $2.98, or an Ashley signature four-piece bedroom set for $4.99, or a five-piece dinette set for only $1.99. Huge selections and savings are going on at Butler Furniture Depot, your back-to-school headquarters. 562-8333 for direction. Who done it?
En Butler Furniture Depot hablamos español.
I'll tell you about it.
I didn't know that was in my cup.
Really? Well, let's just say that's how I stumbled upon it. Because that's when I first moved here. And yeah, it was interesting. I'll tell you about it when we get a chance. Just remind me.
Wheelchairs, Simply Fit, diabetic supplies, underpads, and more. Your durable medical supply center.
Hi, I'm attorney Gil Thompson from the Thompson Law Firm, and I want to help with your legal matter. Whether it's criminal defense, bankruptcy, personal injury, or family law, I want to help you. I can be reached at 501-503-5095. Don't face your legal issues alone. You need an attorney whose primary objective is to provide you with the best legal representation. Our office address is 415 North McKinley, Suite 710 in Little Rock. I'm attorney Gil Thompson, and I want to provide you with the best legal representation.
You notice I didn't have two words. Whenever I'm like that, that's a sign.
December 13th, 7 p.m. Thornton Broadcasting Studios, 1501 South Main, Little.
This is going to be an acoustic acapella set where people are going to come together and we're just going to enjoy.
Samaj Brown, Amanda Catrice, and the main man, Tori DeLay.
This will be memorable. Make sure to join us.
December the 13th, 7 p.m. Thornton Broadcasting Studios, 1501 Main. Brought to you by the J.C. Love Morning Show.
Get your advance tickets right now. Go to the website, joininradio.com.
All right, welcome back to the show. Dave Coleman in the house, Black Focus Radio. Robert Webb is still in Missouri. As a matter of fact, I need somebody to send out an APB for Robert Webb in Missouri because, you know, a lot of people don't realize Missouri used to hang a whole lot of black folks back in the day. It just wasn't Alabama and Mississippi. Missouri is right up there as well. And, you know, a big black brother like Robert Webb, we might need to send out we might need to send out the Marines. But hopefully he'll be back tomorrow, and if not, we'll talk to him next week. Don't forget to get that podcast downloaded. Also, make sure you go ahead and get that app downloaded as well. Go out to joinnetradio.com and download the Join That Radio app. That way you can carry us everywhere you go. And then, of course, if you can't download the app, just dog on to joinnetradio.com and you can hear the show live, okay? And then, of course, if you miss some of the show and you want to play it back, like when you're up in the middle of the night and you want to hear my voice, go ahead and download the show. Download that podcast. And you can go out and just search for Black Focus Radio. Somebody called me the other day, say, "Hey, Dave, what's the name of the podcast?" I said, "What do you think the name of the podcast is?" "I don't know." Black Focus Radio. Man, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today, of course. We've got to do our Black Facts today as well. So we cannot do a show without doing Black Facts. I mean, my show is just not proper without doing that. So I want to do a shout out to some of my sisters, because I'm a little annoyed today anyway, because, you know, Miss Universe has been getting hate mail, hate emails. They ain't coming from black folks, I guarantee. So let me do a shout out to some of the sisters out there. But did y'all know that, let's see, do y'all know who the first black woman was to successfully climb Mount Everest? Hey, y'all can stand over there. Hey, just remember, I got my pistol. All right? And I'm a good shot, too. All right? I don't waste bullets. Just letting you know. And I got some silver bullets, too. So just in case y'all are infected with something. Just letting you know that. In 2006, Sophia Dannenberg became the first African-American and first black woman to climb the summit of Mount Everest in Nepal, the world's tallest mountain. Since 1953, only 2,500 people have actually reached the top, and more than 300 people have died trying. But the potentially deadly climb was not at all easy for Sophia. In fact, when she reached the peak, she was suffering from bronchitis, a stuffed nose, frostbite on her face, and a clogged oxygen mask. Nonetheless, she made it to the top and made it back alive. She also successfully climbed other famous mountains, including Mount Tasman in New Zealand, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Mount Rainier in Washington State, and Mount Kenya, yes, in Kenya. Also a businesswoman, Sophia, however, is more than just a mountaineer. She's a graduate from Harvard University. She works at Boeing as an aerospace engineer expert in the global chemical and environmental regulations. Her job is to advise the corporation on EH&S policy, developments and interfacing with global trade associations, governments and United Nations, OECD, APEC, and other international intergovernmental organizations. Prior to launching her career, Sophia was a researcher, writer for a travel guide in Thailand, and a Fulbright Fellow in Environmental Economics in Keio University in Tokyo. She didn't get her first hike until she was in college, when she went rock climbing with a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the first black woman to climb the biggest mountain, Mount Everest. Her name is Sophia Dannenberg. Shout out, shout out, shout out. And that's our Black Fact for today.
Dynamic Black Facts, our culture, our history, our people, on JourneyRadio.com.
And if you would like to sponsor Dynamic Black Facts, what is that supposed to be, Tanya? I guess you think I'm Blade. Yeah, I'm Blade. I'll be glad when they bring Blade back, by the way. I might be Blade. You just mess with me. You might have a blade. Anyway. If you would like to sponsor Dynamic Black Facts, give me a call at 615-554-0568. Need a big sponsor, man. Y'all come on through, man. I think you'll enjoy it. Every day we're getting more and more people listening to the show as Black Focus continues to grow. And, of course, certainly the station is growing exponentially. Here's an opportunity that if you've got a business out there, don't be fooled by, I only advertise on Facebook. I'm telling you, radio still does the job. And as a matter of fact, we can give you some great rates as well. So give me a call. Don't forget about that. Okay, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about. First of all, I want to thank Patrick Oliver for coming in yesterday. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. You heard me joke with Patrick that I had only planned to keep him like 20 minutes. He ended up staying the whole show and enjoyed it tremendously. Patrick Oliver is a very dear friend of mine and enjoyed him coming on. He's doing great work out there about literacy. And if we are going to solve the problems in our communities, we must read. Y'all hear me saying that all the time. That old saying, the best way to hide something from black folks is to put it in a book. It might be even put it on a computer now because y'all don't even read on your computers. And he made a great point that if you can't go out and buy the research books, some of the books that I've talked about, get you a library card. Because all of that stuff is at the library. Get you a library card. Here's the thing about it. Let's say you get a book, you get a name of a book and it's not at the library. Contact your librarian and say, hey, look, I was looking for this book. How can we get it in the library? In most cases, they'll get it in there for you. Okay? So just be aware of that, all right? Because we've got a lot of educating our own to do. All right? That's why you hear me say all the time that we have to educate our children at home and then take what they get from school as well. You just can't leave it up to schools. That's why Robert gets mad at me because he says I'm always picking on parents. But it is ultimately your responsibility, parents. You got to make sure that your child is getting the proper education. It is no excuse. I don't care how many jobs you work. My mother worked 2 jobs. I would see my mom, she'd leave at 7:15 in the morning. I'd see her at 5 o'clock, about 5 o'clock that evening, 4:30 that evening, and then she'd be leaving to go to her other work at 5 o'clock. I'm just saying. So that's not an excuse. And she didn't abdicate her responsibility because she was, look, I got one of my worst beatings because I got a bad grade. I'm going to tell you, I got another beating because my cousin threw a rock and hit my aunt's back window and it shattered, and that was a bad beating too. I didn't do it, but you know how they used to do. I'm going to whoop both of y'all. I was mad at my cousin. Man. But we got to be responsible for our children's education. So you ought to be teaching black history every day. Every day they come home. Look, even if you haven't done it before, you can always start now. Sit them down this weekend. Say, hey, look, starting Monday, we're going to start doing something a little different. Okay? We're going to do something a little different. That means that we're going to start teaching. I want you every day to bring me a story about a black historian. Do some research. Start them Sunday night. That's part of your homework. Well, Mama, I got a lot of homework already. I know, but it ain't going to hurt you. You know, the one thing about it, homework doesn't hurt your children. And I hear parents complaining about children getting too much homework. Homework ain't going to hurt you. In the long run, it's going to make you a better person. I'm just saying. So appreciate Patrick Oliver showing up yesterday, and we'll get him on some more as he launches this new campaign. But if you don't know Patrick Oliver, you need to get him. You need to get to know him because he is serious about literacy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, as we all should be. So let's get involved and let's get on board and start educating our children and stop being mad because others aren't educating them. Because how many times have I told you, if they really wanted to educate black children, we wouldn't be fighting over schools right now. If they really wanted to educate black children, we wouldn't be complaining about whether or not how much money they're funding. They wouldn't be paying $9,000 per child as opposed to $24,000 per inmate. Hello? If we really wanted to educate, if they really wanted to educate black children, let me say that again. They would not be only paying $9,000 per child in public schools, as opposed to $24,000 per inmate. Hello? I'm just saying. Don't get mad at me. I know some of y'all do. Some of y'all call me crazy. All I ask you to do before you call me crazy and pass judgment, go research some of the things that I've been saying. Go research some of the things that I talk about every day on this show, that we, Robert Webb and I, talk about every day on this show, and some of our guests talk about every day on this show. I'm about black empowerment. Told you I'm not carrying water for anyone else. I'm not carrying water for Hispanics. I'm not carrying water for Jews. I'm not carrying water for Asians. I'm not carrying water but nobody but black folks. It's about time. We allow our movement to become bastardized by taking up the arms and the flag of other movements. And all those other movements benefit from the pain and suffering and the labor that black people have done for this country for decades, for centuries. And then when they get their little comeuppance, they turn up their noses at black people. In fact, they already have their racist attitudes towards black people, but they use our labor, our intellectual labor, to get the come up. The next time you go to a store in your community and it's owned by someone other than black, look around that store. How many black people are they employing? But they're making money off of that community. Wouldn't it stand to reason that little Johnny from the neighborhood could go to, it used to be that way. I grew up on 24th and Schiller. And right there on 25th and Summit, there used to be an old store. Right now it's a vacant lot. But when I was a kid and I went to Mitchell, that school right across the street, there used to be an old store. It was owned by two white guys, two brothers. But you know what? When you went in that store, there was always a black kid who was a bagger, who made money, who worked at that store. Hello? So you tell me why there aren't any black children working in these Hispanic stores or these Asian stores. That says they don't give a damn about your community. Why are you taking them your money? Hello? It's time to get real, folks. It's about us. Unabashedly about us. If we're going to save ourselves, we got to drop the mantle of everybody else's causes and start focusing on our causes. Because at the end of the day, it is our black boys who are going to prison. It is our black girls who are now increasing their prison presence as well. It is our community that looks like bombed out shelters. It is our community that are being that is being gentrified. And we're sitting around twiddling our thumbs, wondering what we should do. It's very simple. Turn inward to yourselves and say, hey, let's fix this. We've got too many degreed people, black males and black females in this country to not be able to fix our problem. The problem is that everybody want to lead. Everybody want to have his or her name attached. I did this. Who cares? I don't care who did what. How many kids have you saved? That's what I'm saying. You heard Patrick yesterday. This man could have been making lots of money in aerospace. He decided to educate black children. As you all know, I'm a computer technician. I could be making a lot more money than I'm making now, but I come in here every day because I feel like this is my calling. This is important to me to try to educate my people. And some of y'all call me crazy. But that's okay, because I am crazy. I got 13 personalities. A couple of them you don't want to see. 855-525-5683. Today we're going to talk, we were going to talk a little bit about cops yesterday. We didn't get a chance to do that because I ended up keeping Patrick, so that's fine. So we kind of, so if the tease looks a little similar to what it was yesterday, that's why. Because we're going to follow up on some of the things that I wanted to talk about yesterday as well, okay? And I've got a great quote from Kwame Ture that I'm probably going to read here in a moment. And then I'll probably read it again. In fact, let me find it, because people have already started, hitting up on that quote. And it's a great quote. And it kind of, and I guess the reason I went on that diatribe is because it kind of speaks to what I was just saying. Okay? So let me read this quote by Kwame Ture. Now, if you don't know who Kwame Ture is, that tells me that you have to do some research. You probably say, well, is he an African? Well, he is of African descent, yeah. Now, when I call his name, you're going to know who he is. At least I hope you will. Okay? Is he from Tanzania? Well, no, he ain't from Tanzania. Well, his name Kwame Ture. Where'd that come from? He was the founder of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You knew him as Stokely Carmichael. He later changed his name to Kwame Ture. But here's what Stokely said. We are told, if you work hard, you'll succeed. But if that were true, black people would own this country. We are oppressed because we are black. Not because we are ignorant, not because we are lazy, not because we are stupid and got good rhythm, but because we are black. See that line that says black people are lazy? You hear that all the time? You know that was nothing more than a racist trope, because as Kwame Ture just said, if it were true, then we'd own this country. No. So we've got to get together, my brothers and sisters. Don't be afraid. Oh, I don't want to do that because my white friend will be mad at me. Well, if their white friend is mad at you because you're trying to save black kids, then that ain't your friend. If your white boss is mad at you because you're trying to do something for your community, that's not your friend. And maybe you ought to understand that he will sell you down the river as quickly as possible. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. It's time for us to empower ourselves. But before you can empower yourselves, you have to begin by researching yourself, knowing thyself. Then once you know yourself, then you can begin your path to enlightenment and empowerment. But part of the reason that we continue to struggle as black people is that we don't know ourselves. We don't know our origins, not just our DNA, but we don't know the things that we do. Where did it come from? The religion that you have, where did it come from? Who were those people? What did those people look like? You can't tell me that's not important. It is important. It was so important that they didn't want you to read. Do you not understand that? Please, my brothers and sisters, you must begin a campaign for reading your children. If nothing else, make them read for dinner. All right, before we eat. I know some of y'all don't sit down and eat at a dinner table like we did when we were growing up. But before we eat, I need little Johnny to read me this paragraph. And then after we finish eating, before you go to bed, I need Damadidra to read me this paragraph. And I don't mean calling words. After they read it and complete it, then ask them, now tell me what you read. That's called reading with comprehension. That's what we got to do. We got to put the task on our children. I get so tired of black parents. Oh, our grew up so tough. I don't want my kids to grow up tough. Well, that's why you're successful when your kids are struggling, because you've laid it out for them. They ain't had to struggle for anything. They don't appreciate anything. I'm reminded of the young lady who her mom and aunt bought her a used car, and she walked off because she wanted something new. I'm reminded of the sister who pays her son $1,000 a month to do nothing. And all he does is spends it on, that's his allowance. And she's working 2 and 3 jobs to make sure that she can keep up with that $1,000 a month allowance. Y'all hear me? Part of the reason that our children are getting in trouble because they don't understand the struggle, because y'all have made it easy for them. I'm not saying that they have to go without food like some of us did. I'm not saying some of us have to go without, I'll tell you what, or eat beans for 3 days in a row. One of the worst beatings I ever got. I told you about my mom and her work schedule. So she left a pot of beans on the stove. So when my mom would leave to go to work that evening, we would hit the street. Me and my sister, who was my little sister, so I had to take her because I was babysitting. So I forgot about the pot of beans on the stove that night. And when I came back, the entire house was full of smoke. Full of smoke. And I realized when I opened the front door and ran to the kitchen and saw that pot of beans, and the beans were popping out of the pot like it was popcorn. I mean, and they were pinto beans too. It's about 6:30. My mom didn't get home to 10. So I got into motion to try to fix it. I knew I wasn't going to be able to explain where the beans were. So once I tried to get all the smoke out of the house, and there was so much smoke that it had even gotten into our clothing in the curtains. So it was even in the carpet. So there was no way that I was going to be able to, I think I was about 10 or 11 years old. I didn't know anything about air freshener. I'm laughing now because I remember throwing, Mr. Clean up in the air to try to get it to cover the smoke. So then when it came about 5 minutes to 10, I knew my mom would be home about 10:15. I ran and jumped in the bed. I could hear my mom open the door. As soon as she got in the living room, my room was in the back of the house. As soon as she opened the door, I could hear her say, "What is that smell? What's burning? What's burning?" She walks back to the kitchen. By the way, the pot that the beans were in was smoke black. I'm laughing. She comes back to the kitchen. She lifts up the lid on the pot. She looks at the beans and they all black and charred, and I mean, they could have been coals. She said, "David," and my room was right off the kitchen. So, I mean, "David, what happened? What happened to them beans?" And I told her, I said, "Mom, I left. Me and Tracy went out to play and I forgot and left them on." And she said, "I ain't gonna whoop you right now, but I'm gonna get you." So needless to say, that night of sleep was kind of rough on me. Next day, she wore me out. And she wore me out not because, of course, she was upset because those beans, we were going to have to eat those till Friday. That's all we had. But she was more upset because I could have burned down the house. So I got a good whooping. Now, I tell that story because, see, back then, yeah, we were poor. We weren't poor like a lot of my friends were, but we were eating. But that learned me a lot. It learned me more about responsibility. It learned me to be considerate of others as well, because, as I said, those beans were put on that Wednesday, I believe. We had to eat beans till Friday, beans and cornbread. My mom didn't get public assistance. We didn't get food stamps. And during that time period, when the TV would break, we would go a while before this TV would get fixed. But I read Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys. I told you I read J.R.R. Tolkien. I had read it probably 3 or 4 times before I even got to the 6th grade. Star Trek, C.S. Lewis, Out of the Silent Planet. Y'all remember the weekly readers, right? Remember the weekly readers that I think once a month, or maybe it was once a week, you get the weekly reader, and at the back you would have book list, books you could order. I remember reading Jaws before Jaws became a movie. And I tell my friends, I've already read that. Oh man, have you seen Jaws? No, the book was better. The book was better. My stepbrother, I would always try to get them to read The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and Return of the Kings. So when it came out, as a matter of fact, it was about 3 or 4 years ago when Sam came up to me and said, "Hey man, I remember I never knew these books was that good," because the movie was out now. And he said, "Yeah, I remember when we were kids, you used to try to get us to read these books." I said, "Yeah, I told y'all they were good." What I'm trying to get you all to understand is that it is our responsibility to educate our children. And in today's time, there is no excuse why your child can't read on school level. That's not the teacher's fault. There's no excuse why you can't do basic math. That's not the teacher's fault. Unless there is some type of mental issue, dyslexia or something like that. Some of you parents are dropping the ball when it comes to your kids. Don't get mad at me. I'm just being real. We got to take responsibility. No one can save us from us, for us, but us. We got to take responsibility. That's not to absolve the white community from what they owe us as it relates to reparations and other things. But we got to make sure our ducks are in a row. We just have to. I mentioned yesterday, part of the reason that I got the Dell job 15 years ago, well, it's been almost 20 years ago now. I worked for them for 15 years, is because I was self-taught. I remember when they said Dell was coming and they took applications, we went to the interview. And here's how I got self-taught. So I was working at an insurance company, right? This was around the mid-90s. And the insurance company came in and they had computers on every desk. And back then when Microsoft first came out, Windows first came out, they would give you these boxes of books for Word, for Excel, for PowerPoint, and for Access. And then they would give you a general book about just using Windows. Y'all remember those books? They would give them to you to teach you. It was basically instruction manuals. So when I worked at this insurance company, they came in and we had just moved from Memphis, and that's how I ended up in Nashville. Is that the company came to me and said, "Hey, look, is there anyone who would like to go to Nashville and open the Nashville office?" I raised my hand. There were other issues why I went, but yeah, I went. Lived out of the Crown Plaza for 9 months. Had a concierge. It was pretty cool. They'd bring my paper every day. I'd walk in a hotel. I was living in the Crown Plaza in downtown in Nashville for 9 months. Because they had decided whether or not they were going to make me permanent in Nashville. So I would drive up on a Sunday night from Memphis, and then I would leave Thursday evening from Nashville and stay and come back because I maintained an apartment in Memphis. And I lived off of my per diem. I wouldn't even cash my checks. It just went to the bank. So this company bought these brand new computers. And while everybody else was out in the office grab button and doing everything else, you know what I would do? I went into the office and I would read those manuals from cover to cover. That's how I learned Access. You know, Access is Microsoft's database software. So I went through and built a database. My other friends were playing grab butt. So Dale comes to Nashville and Dale says, and the city of Nashville demanded that Dale would hire people from Nashville. They gave him a 20-year contract where they sold the land to Dale for $1. But the stipulation was that you must maintain 500 employees from Davidson County and surrounding areas for 20 years. So they put out the clarion call to say, hey, we need people to come and apply for these jobs. I was one of those people. Walked into the interview, the computer technician. He explained to me what it was about. He says, what type of experience you have? I told him my story I just told you about how I self-taught myself on Microsoft. I didn't have any real troubleshooting experience, but when the computers were down in the insurance office, because everything was brand new, guess who they called? Me. As a matter of fact, the technician that was in Detroit, where the company was based, he would always, when we first started, he would call, say, is there anyone there that knows anything about computers? They would always point at me. I didn't know much. So he would tell me if there was one that wasn't working. He told me how to break it down and look at the memory and look at the hard drive and all that stuff. So when I went to the interview at Dell, when I told the computer technician or the guy who was doing the hiring what I could or could not do, you know what he said to me? In that interview room, there was a computer. He said, show me. I said, what would you like to show me? He said, show me what you can do what do you know about Word? What do you know about Access? What do you know about PowerPoint? What do you know about Excel? I said, well, this is what I've learned. I'm self-taught. I didn't actually go to, and I showed him all I knew. Then he says, what do you know about the inner workings of a computer? Do you know how to break one down? Do you know there were some components on the table. So what is this? I said, that looks like memory. That looks like a hard drive. Back then they had the big hard drives. Drop it on a cat, it would kill them. Do you know how to connect a keyboard, a mouse, and stuff like that? They hired me on the spot. Now, why am I telling you that story? I tell you that I'm self-educated on computers. I did not go to school for a computer science degree. I went to school for business administration. But because I did my due diligence to teach myself, this is why I tell you all the time that there is no excuse why you should not know, because all you have to do is Google. Google is a wonderful tool. And I tell people all the time that when I was a technician at Dell, see, here's the thing about if you all had Dells, 10, 12 years ago, when you had a problem with your computer, you had to call the technician. And the technician, and I used to use the analogy, imagine you have to have surgery, okay? And you have to call the doctor, and the doctor will be on the phone, and he'll tell you how to do your own surgery. That's what it was like being a computer technician at Dell. They would call you up. I remember walking an 85-year-old woman through, over the telephone, taking her hard drive out. I walked a 90-year-old man through replacing his memory. That's the type of job that was. And I was self-taught. I'm not a special person. I'm not an Einstein. I was a black guy, a black kid, just like your kids are. There is nothing different. Unless there are learning disabilities, at the end of the day, black kids are the same everywhere you go. Black kids have the capacity to learn just like white kids. And me, fortunately, because my mom was a caterer too, so I ended up going to different white events. And it brings me to another point. This is why standardized testing is so flawed. Because standardized tests are typically made by white people. Now, some things are given, like math. But let's say, for instance, you have to do a comparison on that test. And you have, let's say, do you know what a saucer is? Most black kids don't. Because most black kids, when their parents drank coffee, they drank it straight from the cup. They didn't have a saucer. So when the comment is saying, man, that happened faster than I could get my coffee saucered and blowed. Do you know what that means? That means that back in the old days, they would pour their coffee in their saucer, that little plate underneath the cup, so it would cool faster so they could drink it. But a standardized test would ask the black kid what a saucer is. The black kid, in all likelihood, because he grew up in the inner city, he wouldn't know what a saucer is. He wouldn't know the difference between a salad fork and a dinner fork. I did because my mom was a caterer. I'm simply saying to black people, anyone who's listening to me today, is that we have to take responsibility for our children's education. We just have to, my brothers and sisters. We cannot accept the fact that a system, a country which is based on racism, has any good intentions for our children. We cannot accept that. We cannot believe that. Here's my prima facie evidence to that point. The prison industrial complex. See, one of the stories that I want to talk about today is, should white mothers be responsible for the opioid epidemic that is infecting their children the way black mothers were blamed for the crack epidemic? Hello? Hello? Think about that. Let me read this article to you a little bit. 1986 became the year when black mothers were blamed for the crack epidemic in their communities. As the nation faces the current opioid epidemic, just need to check my time here just a moment. All right, good, we got time. As the nation faces the current opioid epidemic, why aren't white mothers getting blamed for the crisis? What caused the United States to change our song and dance routine, our entire playlist for warring against drug epidemics? Is it as simple as learning from the past? Answering these questions requires exploring how color blindness, the notion that one does not see race as expressed in the law, still serve as a way to create and maintain racism. Let me take a note here. Bill Cosby's in jail. I just heard Harvey Weinstein has settled for $25 million of his accusers. So am I hearing that Harvey Weinstein is not going to go to jail? He's not going to be prosecuted? Hello, let me read that again. Answering the questions requires exploring how colorblindness, the notion that one does not see race, as expressed in the law, still serve as a way to create and maintain racism. That is exactly what is happening to Bill Cosby. I digress. Look, if Bill Cosby did what he did, okay. I'm not defending Bill Cosby. But why is it that the black people are going to jail and the white people are giving settlements and they're not getting any jail time? I just need an answer. It requires exploring the ways in which the colorblind narrative is used to prevent restitution to various people of color. It invites us to revisit the intersections or class, race, gender, and the subtle ways narratives are crafted along these intersections to promote systems of oppression. In this post, I began to explore these factors in my inquiry. In their ACLU report, Cracks in the System, 20 Years of the Unjust Federal Crack Cocaine Law, it is noted that the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 established mandatory minimum sentences for federal drug trafficking crimes and created a 10-to-1 sentencing disparity between powdered cocaine and crack cocaine. The act provided that individuals convicted of crimes involving 500 grams of powder cocaine or just 5 grams of crack cocaine, the weight of 2 pennies, were sentenced to at least 5 years imprisonment, without regard to any mitigating factors. The act also provided that those individuals convicted of crimes involving 5,000 grams of powder cocaine and 50 grams of crack be sentenced to 10 years in prison. The race was not explicitly written in the 86 law. Otherwise, it would have been easier to combat it, such as in the Supreme Court case in Brown versus the Board of Education. Still, what makes the law racist, during the 80s and 90s, the United States experienced a rise in crack cocaine, which became widely associated with black people, particularly in working poor urban communities. On the other hand, powdered cocaine was associated with affluence, and particularly white people. By heavily penalizing crack versus powder cocaine, the federal laws targeted racial groups without naming it. You all get that, right? And I remember back then when I was becoming aware, I did not understand this. And here's where some of our civil rights organizations let us down. Because here's the thing about this. If you were serious about the fight on crack cocaine and the drug fight, then you have to have powder cocaine to make crack cocaine. So doesn't it stand to reason, isn't it logical that you should be penalizing those who use the powder cocaine more? Because without the powder, there is no crack. But you know what? White folks was using powder cocaine, and black folks, unfortunately, was using crack cocaine. Compared to whites, racial minorities were at a low risk for powder cocaine, and Hispanics were at a low risk for crack cocaine. Blacks were at an increased risk for lifetime and recent crack use in unconditional models, but this association was lost when controlling for all socioeconomic variables. Therefore, it appears that blacks are, in fact, at higher risk for crack use and associated outcomes, but this may be driven by socioeconomic factors, suggesting that SES may be a fundamental cause for racial disparities in crack use. In the conditional model for lifetime use, higher educational attainment was associated with increased likelihood of powder cocaine use and decreased likelihood of crack use. The higher the income was associated with, the decreased likelihood of crack use. Now, I can witness this myself because I grew up here in Little Rock and I matriculated in many of those circles, both poor and rich, because of some of the jobs that I had. And sure enough, fortunately for me, I was never a crack user and I was never a cocaine user because, number one, I was afraid of it. Anything that would get me hooked the first time I tried it, I wasn't interested because that's part of the reason you rarely see me get drunk. I drink, but I don't get intoxicated because I don't like losing control. But I had friends who used both. I had white friends who used crack and cocaine. Some use crack, some use cocaine, but the majority of my black friends, some of them that I knew, many of them used crack. Many of them, even today, who were fortunate to overcome it, you can see the vestiges of the use of crack cocaine. Some women that I knew that were gorgeous. You see them now and you know. They don't have to tell you. Let me skip on. Bad black mothers and vulnerable white girls. I recall a different narrative from the United States war on drugs. I recall the media working overtime to dehumanize black mothers and families crippled by drug dependency and the disproportionate over-policing and heavier penalties. The media helped shape the narrative. I've told you that the white media is your enemy as well. They help shape the narrative to shame and justify the lack of empathy and investment in treatment and care. They sensationalize media portrayals of black mothers on crack, giving birth to new generation of crack babies out of wedlock, sought to reinforce stereotypes of controlling narratives of inherent cultural deficiencies among African Americans. Bad black mothers and fathers who use and deal crack were a plague to society, to be controlled and destroyed. One day, as I was watching television, I saw a commercial focusing on the opioid crisis about Amy's story from Truth Initiative. On their website, they share part of a story. When Amy was 14, a knee injury on the soccer field put her in the hospital and resulted in a prescription for Vicodin. Over the next 5 years, she endured several surgeries on that knee and received a flood of opioid prescriptions. In this vulnerable state, Amy developed an addiction to Vicodin. When her supply ran out, she took drastic measures to get more. She started relying on self-harm to secure prescriptions for opioids. She would cut herself and smash her injured knee. At age 18, she reached the peak of her desperation. In hopes of getting more pills, she intentionally crashed her car into a dumpster at over 40 miles per hour. The framing of the story signals virtues by which Amy is worthy of treatment and care. Amy gets the benefit of being young and innocent that more easily happens for white youth compared to Latino and African American youth. She played soccer, became injured, endured surgeries, and received a flood of highly addictive pain drugs in her vulnerable state. Let me ask you something before I continue. Is a 14-year-old kid in a vulnerable state that grows up in the inner city with a poor mother? I digress. In other words, Amy was a good kid who was a victim to a system out of control. She was not portrayed as a culturally deficient junkie from a broken home who needed to take responsibility and be locked away from society. Was Amy heavily penalized for possible insurance fraud, reckless driving, and destroying property? Where was the public service campaign featuring 14-year-old African-American girl in the 1990s who turned to recreational drugs to numb her pain and stole property to generate money to buy more? She had to be responsible, not a victim. Young African American girls did not tend to get funded national media narratives about their vulnerable with a dominant narrative that inextricably connects blackness with innocence. Not until a social issue impacts white middle affluent youth. The National Women's Law Center found that black girls in every state in the United States are more than twice as likely to be suspended from school than white girls, and it is not because they misbehave more. Hello, I'm not done yet. Let me take the top of the hour break and let me continue, because we need to talk about this. Overall, black girls are 5 times more likely to be suspended from school and 2 times more likely to be expelled without educational services than white girls. To their credit, the Truth Initiative shares stories of individuals whose diverse backgrounds to show that opioid addiction can impact anyone. Also, they have committed to creating a culture where all youth and young adults live tobacco-free. According to their website, Truth Initiative's 20 years of life-saving work has prevented millions of young people from becoming smokers. Nevertheless, the stories selected seem to appeal to dominant white affluent families. Definitions of worthiness of empathy. For example, Truth Initiative features the story of Chris, who can be visibly identified as black and possibly male. He experimented with opioids as a teen after discovering his mother's prescription pills in her medicine cabinet. Later, after being injured on the job, he became addicted. The narrative has more marketing appeal in a colorblind racist society for one about an unemployed black man doing drugs for the sake of fun, becoming addicted, will not bode as well. We'll take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Business owner, can I talk to you for a moment? How many people have come up to you and said, hey, I didn't know you had a business? Yeah, that can happen when you don't advertise. I have a solution for it. Advertise on joinetradio.com and let the world know that you're in business. I know what you're thinking. Advertising is so expensive. I've got a great package for you that will cut your expense and increase your bottom line. It's only $125 for startup and new businesses. Call me, David W. Coleman, at 615-554-0568, and I'll put together a package specifically for your business. Now is the time to tell the world, hey, I'm in business. Come spend your money on quality goods in my store. Let us help you at joinetradio.com. Here's the number. Call me, 615-554-0568. We are here to assist you in building your brand.
Hi, I'm attorney Theodore Thompson from the Thompson Law Firm, and I want to help with your legal matter. Whether it's criminal defense, bankruptcy, personal injury, or family law, I want to help you. I can be reached at 501-503-5095. Don't face your legal issues alone. You need an attorney whose primary objective is to provide you with the best legal representation. Our office address is 415 North McKinley, Suite 710 in Little Rock. I'm attorney Theodore Thompson, and I want to provide you with the best legal representation.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here is my personal invite for you to join us for Christmas Unplugged.
I'm so glad that it's Christmas time. We celebrate Jesus.
December 13th, 7 p.m. at the Thornton Broadcasting Studio, 1501 South Main, Little Rock.
This is going to be an acoustic a cappella set where people are going to come together and we're just going to enjoy.
Samaj Brown, Amanda Catrice, and my main man, Tori DeLay.
Holy night, holy night.
join us.
December the 13th, 7 p.m. Thornton Broadcasting Studios, 1501 Main. Brought to you by the JC Love Morning Show.
Get your advance tickets right now. Go to the website, joininradio.com.
Serving the families of Clark County and the surrounding area since 1966, it's Mitchell Funeral Home. Understanding that a funeral is a celebration of life, the entire staff of Mitchell Funeral Home takes great pride in the caring, personal, and professional service they offer. Cremations, funeral plannings, burial policies, life insurance, notary, and monument sales are a few of the services we offer. Mitchell Funeral Home, Arkadelphia, 870-246-2611. Mitchell Funeral Home. Quality you can appreciate, service you can depend on.
You got it. He's Rock's answer to your aggravation. Joy Network.
The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices. Central Arkansas, surrounding areas, and the nation. Get ready. Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855-525-5683. So here's your host, David W. Coleman and Robert Webb.
All right, welcome back to the show, Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices. I kind of left you hanging in the last hour. The question was, should white mothers be held accountable for the opioid epidemic the way black mothers were for the crack epidemic? Let us remember, before I finish this piece, because please go out to my wall and read this piece. It is so profound. It encapsulates Racism in America 101. Because part of the reason some of your brothers and your sisters, some of your cousins are in prison and dead is because of the crack epidemic. And what this piece does not talk about is, in fact, that it was the government, the federal government, who put crack cocaine in the black community. This is not some conspiracy theory. This is fact. If you think it isn't, simply go out and Google Gary Webb from the San Jose Mercury News. Gary Webb was a white reporter who discovered this, wrote about it. He was ostracized. He was fired from his jobs. And finally, he allegedly committed suicide, because he was found shot in the head, not once, but twice. Now think about this. I'm going to commit suicide, so I'm going to shoot myself in the head. I missed. Or the first bullet, it ricocheted, it didn't work, so I'm going to shoot myself again. That's what happened to Gary Webb, formerly of the San Jose Mercury News. As a matter of fact, on my home computer, I have his story saved in my favorites, because every time I go to my favorites, I need to remind myself what this government did to our people. Not just slavery, but what it continues to do every day. And you think that they want to educate your children. Hello? Black people have always been commodities in America, and they continue to be commodities today. See the prison industrial complex, but I digress. Here's the last few graphs of this story. Now is the time for both accountability and empathy. Accountability does not stop or start with large pharmaceutical companies who produce opioids. Accountability involves each person and institution who supported the criminalization of crack cocaine's use and the racist practice of crafting laws to heavily target and penalize African American people. See Joe Biden. Hello? See Bill Clinton. See Hillary Clinton. See some of your black representatives who went along with this. This is why you ought to be voting. Accountability is not just for this system. It is for anyone who comes to your neighborhood and says, I'm going to help you. I need your vote. Accountability involves each person and institution who showed little or no empathy regarding the drug dependency of African Americans and various people of color over the years. It calls for people and institutions to have a come to Jesus moment to confess and repent of their part. True accountability calls for changing laws, policies, practices, and willingly committing the financial resources to address the damage to and help restore communities of color. If you think black people need to get over it, tell every white suburban family who is dealing with the opioid dependency in their families to shut up and get over it. Neither response is acceptable in my great American songbook. 1986 was a good year for music, for blaming black mothers against a backdrop of national legacy of propping up white women as the pinnacle of womanhood and motherhood. It was a year of the same old racist, classist, and sexist lies promulgated as truths. It was a year where we masked a legalized attack on African American and Latino people as the war on drugs. However, this current year is different. It is a good year to take responsibility for those horrid actions and invest in financial restitution to the casualties of the United States drug war. This nation is capable of stopping and restoring the damage long-standing incarceration approaches and taking on today's drug crisis. This year is a good year to change our racial tune of expecting African American people to prove our worthiness for restorative justice, and most importantly, to thrive. Wow. Hell of a blog. Hell of a blog. Because see, I too am tired of, these poor white families. We've got to do something. We've got to get them into therapy. We got to get counseling. We can't send them to jail. Crack cocaine gets you addicted. It causes you to rob, steal, and kill. And so do opioids. But because the majority of white people are using the opioids, we got to get them counseling. You see, I read that piece because it's part of the backdrop of the beginning of this show when I said we as black people have got to be responsible for whom? Black people. Hello? You cannot be ashamed of it. You cannot be afraid to support black people. If this country truly wanted to educate black people, the question of reparations should not even be an issue. Black men should not be continuously killed in the streets. And then people turn around and blame the black men. Redlining should not still be going on, but there are multiple stories I posted on my wall about redlining. There's a story I posted this morning about JP Morgan Chase, I should say, of how they treated black people. There's a story that has been floating around about how Mercedes-Benz charges higher interest rates for black people who want to buy a Mercedes as opposed to white people. Racism hasn't gone anywhere. It has just gotten more sophisticated. It's a covert operation because many of you black people out there think because you can buy a new car, you can buy a home in a white neighborhood, because you can go in a white restaurant, that everything is hunky-dory. And it is not. It is not. They want you to get over slavery. They want you to get over the black codes. They want you to get over Jim Crow. They want you to get over the lynchings. But tell them to get over 9/11. They don't even talk about the black people that were killed during 9/11. Whenever you see pictures of those people, you rarely see black people. Even they made a movie. They made a movie about 9/11, and the main hero, who was a former soldier, who was black, was the first person to rush into that building to try to save people. But you know what color they made him in the movie? They made him a white guy. They don't give a damn about your children. Why aren't you educating them yourself? They're going through the motions. This thing that's going on here in Little Rock with Asa Hutchinson, this is about blackness. It was about black people being in control of the third largest budget in the state of Arkansas. They couldn't have that. This is about race. I get so irritated when no one wants to talk about race when it's sitting right there on the table, stinking up the room. What's that smell? I don't know. It's time for us to wake up. It begins with education. And not just book education. It begins with your history. It begins with your culture. And your children should be part of that process. It's never too late to learn. Don't tell me, well, I'm too old to learn that stuff. Look, I've told you over and over again, the day that I can't learn, the day that I stop learning is the day that I'm dead. If for some reason in my later life that I contract Alzheimer's and I don't know who I am, I've told my children, I no longer want to be here. Because who I am is what I learn every day. You've got to start teaching your children that. And even though you may not have been a great scholar yourself, it's never too late. There's a commercial that runs on a station that I listen to about a young man, an Hispanic man who's 40 years old. And the commercial is about him going back and getting his GED at 40 years old. It's never too late to learn, my brothers and sisters. And while you're learning, you know what'll happen? If your children see you reading, guess what they're going to do? Read. You know, back in the day, we had the newspaper. So every day when we get the newspaper, the first thing I'd read was the sports section. Of course, I was a sports junkie. Then I'd read the news. I'd read the obituaries. I would even read the want ads. I would even read the sell ads. I would even go and read the business section. We must self-educate. We must self-educate. When your child asks you a question, you don't know the question, say, hey, let's go look it up. Don't tell them to shut up. Don't tell them I don't have time. Don't tell them to ask me later, and then they come back and ask you later, and then you still refuse to help them with the answer. Then when they go to school, hey, mama wouldn't help me. I don't care. Mama don't care. I don't either. Daddy don't care. I don't either. 855-525-5683 is the number. I just mentioned about what's going on here in Arkansas. Kentucky just elected a new governor, Andy Brashear. When you hear people say elections have consequences, then you have to understand what that means. You ought to be pretty clear on what it means now after the election of Donald Trump, because the consequences that many of you are suffering from is because you did not go and vote. So consequently, Donald Trump got elected. They said what was the number? Had 3 million more people voted, he would have never been elected. But we have black people who are telling our black people not to vote. It ain't gonna do you no good. Well, see Donald Trump. I guarantee you that the white supremacists voted. They didn't say it wasn't gonna do them any good. Look what happened. They've got a white supremacist in the White House. Hello? We've got a bad habit of, if it don't affect me personally, then I don't want to be involved in it. We've got to start thinking collectively. How will that help collectively? But back to Governor Andy Brashear. The first thing he did when he got into office, apparently he just took office last Tuesday, he signed an executive order to create a new state school board. The displaced board members promptly said they'd file suit. Well, go right ahead. Not only did he get rid of the school board, but he also got rid of the education commissioner. Hello? By the way, Andy Bevin is a Democrat. That other state board that he just fired? Guess what they were trying to do in Kentucky? They were trying to get charter schools. See, Kentucky there are 41 states who have instituted charter schools, but apparently it hadn't gotten to Kentucky yet. So the teachers, the parents, they got together and they voted Bevin in. And he immediately fired that state board. Now, what's my point? Elections have consequences. So while you have black people running around saying, oh, don't vote, it ain't going to help you, it ain't going to help us, all we have to do is hold them accountable. Yo, man, I voted for you. You said you were going to do this. What happened? And not only that, vote with a purpose. Some of you out there who are basketball players, when you go to the playground, when you go out on the blacktop, man, some of y'all be balling like y'all in the NBA. If you would simply vote like you ball on the blacktop, we'd get some things done. My sisters, if you all would vote just as much as you get your hair done or get your lashes done, well, we'd be doing something. It's about priority. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. We have to look at it collectively. That old saying, it takes a village, that Hillary Clinton hijacked. She didn't know a damn thing about the village. But some of you black sisters, hey, Hillary, this would sound good. It's about saving ourselves. That's what it's really about. It's about self-preservation. At what point do black people take it seriously? That's all I'm asking. We're going to take a break. Let y'all calm down a little bit. I know y'all probably mad at me. And by the way, everything I say, it doesn't mean I'm right. Challenge me. Call me. Say, Brother Coleman, what do you think about this? Well, I think it's this way, because see, here's the other thing. We got to be able to agree to disagree and still be friends and still work together for the betterment of our communities, for the betterment of our children. See, my goal is not to leave just a legacy with my name on it. My goal is to leave a legacy that people will remember, whether it's through my voice and what I do every day on this show, or whether it's me talking to some young black brother and sister who may not have that person to talk to. I tell people all the time, I'm going to live forever. And people say, oh, you must be Christian. I say, no, I'm not. I said, but here's how I live forever. I work with children, and every time I see a young person, no matter where I am, if I can talk to them, I try to impart some knowledge on them. That's why I love interns coming in here, because I love dropping knowledge on them. Because you know what's going to happen? They may not remember everything I say to them. They may not understand everything I say to them, but they're going to understand something, and they're going to remember something. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to impart that knowledge on somebody else. And then they're going to impart that knowledge on somebody else. And they may impart that knowledge on their children. And for generations, I live forever. I can tell you right now, men in my life who have passed on, Samuel Hudson Sr., the knowledge that he imparted on me, I impart on young people. Samuel Hudson Sr. is living through me with the knowledge that I impart on other people. Ben Madry, Clifton Towns, John Talley. Those are men that were in my life that dropped knowledge on me, the same knowledge that I try to drop on young people. Thusly, I live forever. We got to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. It's Black Focus Radio. Yes, I'm on fire today on joynetradio.com.
Butler Furniture Depot is your back-to-school headquarters. All college students, fraternities, and sororities get a two-piece living room set for only $3.99, or take advantage of our four-piece living room special, which includes sofa, love seat, chair, and ottoman, for only $5.99. Quantities are limited.
Who done it? The Butler done it. Butler Furniture Depot.
Or what about an extra thick queen-size mattress, full or queen size, for only $2.98, or an Ashley Signature four-piece bedroom set for $4.99, or a five-piece dinette set for only $1.99. Huge selections and savings are going on at Butler Furniture Depot, your back-to-school headquarters.
Call 562-8333 for directions. Who done it? The Butler done it.
En Butler Furniture Depot hablamos español.
Who done it? The Butler done it. Butler Furniture Depot.
Hi, this is Alvin from Habibi's 4317 East Broadway in North Little Rock. We still have the green top at your very next stop. The same great service, but more of it. Give us a call, 501-663-1553 or 664-2992, or call our toll-free number, 1-877-HABIBI-1. Diapers, pull-ups, hospital beds, wheelchairs, Simply Fit, diabetic supplies, underpads, and more. Your durable medical supply center.
Hi, I'm attorney Theodore Thompson from the Thompson Law Firm, and I want to help with your legal matter. Whether it's criminal defense, bankruptcy, personal injury, or family law, I want to help you. I can be reached at 501-503-5095. Don't face your legal issues alone. You need an attorney whose primary objective is to provide you with the best legal representation. Our office address is 415 Norfolk Kinley, Suite 710 in Little Rock. I'm attorney Theodore Thompson, and I want to provide you with the best legal representation.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here is my personal invite for you to join us for Christmas Unplugged.
I'm so glad that it's Christmas time. We celebrate Jesus.
December the 13th, 7 p.m. at the Thornton Broadcasting Studio, 1501 South of Main, Laurel.
This is going to be an acoustic a cappella set where people are going to come together and we're just going to enjoy.
Samaj Brown, Amanda Catrice, and my main man, Tori Delaney.
Holy night. This will be memorable. Make sure to join us.
December the 13th, 7 p.m. Thornton Broadcasting Studios, 1501 Main. Brought to you by the JC Love Morning Show.
Get your advance tickets right now. Go to the website, joininradio.com.
All right, welcome back to the show, Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me. Hope you don't get mad at me. Well, if you listen to this show, you ought to be used to me by now. I want to make sure I cover this before I get out here. As you all know, that Miss Universe was recently elected as the prettiest woman in the world. That's what these beauty pageants are, allegedly. She's a black woman. Y'all know why? I posted a lot of pictures of her on my wall. Go out and check them out. Beautiful black woman. She doesn't have weave. She has natural hair. She's a beautiful black woman. I found it interesting that the two people that were up against her was Miss Mexico, if I remember correctly, and Miss Puerto Rico. They look like white women. Now, the irony is that the majority of the people that live in those countries are people of color. But they chose to put a black woman up. I mean, people that look like white women up against Zozabini Tunzi. Zozie, as she calls herself. So it was interesting that something came across my wall that really bothered me, and it makes me think about how we have to protect our black women. Let me give you a story. A few years ago, when a lot of the killings were going on around the country, in which they are still going on, we're going to talk about that here in a moment. And my daughter, who is a lot like me, was protesting in Chicago after, I want to say, the Laquan McDonald killing. And U.S. News and World Report interviewed her. Now, my daughter is a degreed woman who has a master's degree on her way to her doctorate. So U.S. News and World Report interviewed her. And of course, this is a national publication. And the story went all across the nation and the world. And someone in Pittsburgh, a white man, decided to begin to harass my daughter on Facebook. My daughter called me, and she told me. I said, "Do you have his name?" "Yes, I do, Dad." "Is he on Facebook?" "Yes, he is, Dad." I go out to his Facebook page. Ironically, I find out where he works, and I find out his phone number. And I called him. And I told him this. I said, "Hey, man, I understand that you are harassing my daughter." I said, "Let me tell you something. I don't know if you know any other black people, but you sure as hell don't know me. And if my daughter calls me again and says you're continuing to harass her, I'm going to make a trip to Pittsburgh." And I wasn't playing. He got the message. He didn't harass my daughter any further. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I've told you all that we have to begin to protect our black women. 64,000 black women are missing in America today. We've got to protect our women. So I was disturbed the other day when Zozabina Tunzi posted a piece, and I want to read it to you. She says, I just want to take a moment to dedicate a post to the unkind comments that I have been receiving about my blackness since my crowning. To comments that are aimed at all black-skinned girls at some point in our lives. Not because it hurts me or gets under my skin, because I see an opportunity to educate and speak out on such a serious issue. When people say hurtful, negative things about black women and black people in general, I do not quickly take offense, and here's why. Society has previously programmed in such a way that there's nothing beautiful about being black. The further you are from being fair-skinned, the uglier you are. That unfortunately has been the universal standard of beauty, and it is very difficult for some people to unlearn it. I am going into Miss Universe to shatter whatever misconceptions and stereotypes people have on beauty. These comments are exactly why we should keep inserting ourselves in spaces where we have been told we do not belong and we will never make it. It is up to us to rewrite the narrative. To whomever else thinks black is not beautiful, I cannot wait for you to experience the depth and magic of a black woman. I am the daughter of the African soil, and I am beautiful. See your face reflected in mine. Zozabini Tunzi, 2019 Miss Universe. Damn! I love that woman. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. These comments are exactly why we should keep inserting ourselves in spaces where we have been told we do not belong. And we will never make it. It is up to us. And then when I read this the first time, it sent chills down my spine. Because see, that's what I've been talking about this whole week, about it is up to us. It ain't up to a government. It is not up to a president or a governor. It is up to us to determine the narrative, to rewrite the narrative. She says, it is up to us to rewrite the narrative. To whomever else thinks black is not beautiful, I cannot wait for you to experience the depth and the magic of a black woman. And I thought about my son and his beautiful wife, and I remember him telling me that he wanted to get married, and he was even willing to go all the way to Ethiopia to get a black woman. I was so proud of him. The depth and the magic. Because, man, loving a black woman is magical. Having a relationship with a black woman is magical. It's enchanting. Zozabini Tunzi is my new black female heroine. You should be taking your daughters and looking at this. I will tell you that if you are going out shopping for Christmas gifts right now, I sure hope you don't buy white dolls for your child. I sure hope you're not buying white dolls for your black daughter. I told you yesterday I didn't. I wouldn't. You heard Patrick and I talk about the books that we read our children. I read my children. People say, well, that wasn't right. That was racist. Well, no, it wasn't racist because black people can't be racist. Well, that was prejudice. No, it wasn't prejudice because, see, I knew, and you should know, that your children are going to be bombarded with negative stereotypes about black people and positive stereotypes about white people. When they turn on the television, when they read the paper, black is bad, white is right. So I made sure that my children in my home were going to be bombarded with positive black images. My son right now, when I get in the car, I know he listens to rap music, but when I get in the car, he hits the button. In fact, his wife calls him an old soul. And I said, well, why do you call my son an old soul? He says, all the women that meet him thinks he's an old soul. He listens to old-fashioned R&B. He has deep wisdom. That made me proud. But I read that post to you because I want you to understand that black women around the world are under attack. Black men, we've got to do a better job in defending them. That means that we've got to get our act together. We cannot turn our backs on them. We cannot forsake them. Neither can they with us. We are one. Without a black woman, I am nothing. Because after all, not only did a black woman birth me into the world, it was a black woman who birthed the world. Woo! Hallelujah! Raise your hand and shake them. Even though you're at your desk and your coworker's looking at you like you're crazy, just say, woo! Y'all don't understand the power of blackness. 855-525-5683 is the number. Got a couple other things I want to talk about today, and it's related to policing. You all, I've told you over and over again that there's a problem with policing in America. There's a problem with policing in America. As a matter of fact, it's so bad that they think that they should have special privileges. And they do, because other than the president, they are the only ones that can shoot and kill an individual and not stand trial or go to jail for it. They do it every day, wantonly, without regard. They're shooting people in the back who's running away. They're shooting people just to shoot people. And then when you challenge them, they get offended. And not only do they get offended, the people that are in the system to prosecute them, they don't even do their jobs. Larry Jegley, the Democrat. Let's see here. Y'all voting against Larry Jegley this time around when he comes up for re-election? Are you? I hope so. Maybe someone will run against him. There are some prominent black lawyers in this city. Why don't you run against Larry Jegley? There's a problem with policing in this city, in this country. And we are allowing them to run rampant and destroy our neighborhoods and occupy our neighborhoods. It has gotten so bad that the Attorney General last week made the comment that if people don't appreciate police, maybe the police shouldn't protect their neighborhoods. Here is the chief law enforcer of the country basically sending out a dog whistle about black neighborhoods. If we protest the police for injustices, then maybe the police should not protect our neighborhoods. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Barr. They don't protect our neighborhoods anyway. They don't do crap in our neighborhoods except kill and intimidate. They are an occupying force. They don't care about our neighborhoods because they don't even live in our neighborhoods. 80% of the white officers in Little Rock alone don't even live in Arkansas. I don't even live in Little Rock. So don't tell me they care about Little Rock. They don't live here. They are an occupying force. Hello. There's a problem with policing in America, where you can have no regard for life. That's why I took issue last week with Lee Miller. Because, see, we've been going along to get along long enough. It's time to change that tactic. It's time for black people to understand the Constitution of the United States and stand up for your rights. But there's a movement in some black intellectual circles where you just don't even worry about it. You just get home. What if Martin Luther King would have said, we ain't going to worry about civil rights. We're just going to go home. We're not going to march because we can't ride the buses. We're just going to go home. We're not going to protest the murder of Emmett Till. We just want to get home. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And I detest any comment where you are willing to give up your rights as an American citizen just to get home. If you say, you tell me you believe in God, that the moment of your demise was the time of your demise, regardless of how it happened. Woo! There's a problem with policing in America. Let me give you a couple of examples. Y'all remember the story we did a while back in August about the football player at Georgia Southern who was driving a nice car and he was profiled because he came out of a quote-unquote certain neighborhood, and the police pulled him over, claimed and arrested him. And by the way, he was suspended from the team. Even the team didn't give him the benefit of the doubt because the officer said that he had cocaine on the hood of his car. Now, if you've ever been around any powdered substance, you don't even have to have been around cocaine to understand what powder is. Let's say, for instance, everybody has been around baby powder, right? What happens when you blow baby powder? It goes up in the air as a cloud of dust. So the officers arrested this young man because they claimed that he had a white substance on the hood of his car, and they said it was cocaine. Y'all remember when we called South Carolina and made fun of the police? And there's a whole piece on that we did. Y'all remember that? Well, here's another guy who spent 90 days in jail after cops mistook drywall for cocaine. There's a problem with policing in America. Because the football player said when they pulled him in the car and they said, well, why is there a cocaine on the hood of your car? As if they had been doing lines off the hood of his car. And even if they had, driving would have blown any excess cocaine off of his car. But he said, that's bird poop. And the officer argued him down. That's not bird poop. I tell you what, I just tested it and it turned pink. That ain't bird poop, that's cocaine. Took him to jail. Come to find out that the field test that they used was unreliable. And when it was tested again, guess what it was? It was bird poop. Carlos Cash spent 90 days in jail after cops suspected he had cocaine in his vehicle, which turned out to be white powdered drywall. Cops initially pulled over Carlos Cash of Oviedo for driving without headlights in March. Cash, who was on probation for marijuana and cocaine charges stemming from a 2015 arrest, thought cops had stopped him for a traffic violation. An officer found white powder in his seat and floorboard. And when the substance was tested, the results came back positive for cocaine. Now, let me tell you something. I wasn't always an angel. I knew a lot of drug dealers. I've been around drugs. And I promise you, as precious as cocaine was and is, I promise you it wouldn't be on the floorboard of your car for a drug addict or a drug dealer. I promise you that. I'm just being real with you. I'm just being real with you. So you stop, sometimes common sense has to kick in. Of course, Carlos Cash, do I need to tell you what color he is? He said, I know for a fact that it's drywall because I am a handyman. A canine unit on the scene detected that it was believed to be more cocaine and marijuana in the vehicle. Now, let me tell you about these drug stops and these dogs. The state of Tennessee, Channel 5 in Nashville did a study. When you're on the way to Nashville, 40 miles outside of Nashville, there is a stretch before you get to Dixon, Tennessee. And police were pulling over, state troopers were pulling over people and confiscating their cars, and they were claiming that the dogs had gotten a hit. And they got a specialist dog trainer to look at some of the video, and the dog trainer realized that the cop who was running the dog around the car was pulling his leash away a certain way that made it look like the dog had detected drugs in the car, when in fact there had not been any drugs. This was happening to all kinds of people who lived in Tennessee and who were traveling through Tennessee. So just because a canine unit says, hey, I smell drugs, that's not always the case. Cash was booked in Seminole County Jail and held without bond after more tests resulted positive for drugs. Lab results on the substance found in Cash's car came back negative for cocaine 90 days later. He said, I sat there 90 days knowing I was innocent. Cash was released from jail last week, but is calling for an internal investigation with the Oviedo Police Department. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. Yeah, it's going to happen to other people because of the ignorance and the stupidity and the dumb people that we're hiring as police officers, and then we're giving them carte blanche to violate your civil rights. Here's another story. Cops joke and laugh as they killed a handcuffed innocent man who called them for help. This happened in Dallas in 2016. Young man called the police because he was off his medication and he suffered from mental illness. When police arrived, Tony Temple was already handcuffed by a private security guard and sitting peacefully on the sidewalk after asking police to help him. Despite being completely nonviolent in handcuffs for 20 minutes after the police arrived, and there is video tape to corroborate this, Temple was dead. He had harmed no one and had committed no crime. After kneeling on his back, shoving his face into the ground, and literally squeezing the air out of him for 14 minutes, Temple could no longer hold on to life, and he suffocated to death. His death would be ruled a homicide, and the 3 officers involved would be charged. The Dallas Morning News received the body camera footage from the night and published the heartbreaking video this past week. As the video shows, Temple is compliant, in handcuffs and sitting on the ground when police arrive. As officers begin to surround him, though the diagnosed schizophrenic became extremely scared. Still, he never once attempted to harm the officers. He simply begged them to let him go. He started screaming, "You're going to kill me. You're going to kill me. You're going to kill me," as the officers surrounded him. But police did not let go. Instead, they would force him down on the ground, face first, and squeeze the air out of his body. The more Temple squirmed in an effort to breathe, the harder the officers pushed him back down. Temple was then hogtied for trying to breathe. The entire time they were killing him, the officers were cracking jokes and laughing about their actions. Even after Temple's body went limp and he was no longer breathing, police continued to crack jokes. "It's time for school. Wake up," one officer says as Temple lies face down in the grass, unresponsive. "I don't want to go to school. 5 more minutes, Mom," another officer jokes. Despite Temple going completely limp and not responding to anything, the officers continued to smash down on him, all the while joking. For good measure, an EMT responder shoots Temple up with a powerful sedative, despite Temple being completely unconscious at the time. Moments later, Temple's lifeless body was strapped to a gurney as cops continued joking. "He didn't just die down there, did he?" an officer asked. "Did we kill him?" another one jokes. "What's this we stuff about?" Moments later, the EMT tells the officers Temple was dead. One more joke before he turns off his body camera. The officer says, "Sorry, we tried." By the way, those officers, in March, the trial was dismissed by Dallas County District Attorney John Cruzat, dismissed all charges. We have a problem with policing in America. These so-called officers laughed. They choked this man to death. And here's the irony. They had a knee in his back, and he is struggling to breathe. And when you're struggling to breathe, you're fighting. They didn't care. These people are being paid with our tax dollars. Just like Charles Starks didn't care about Bradley Blackshire. He didn't care. I'm a police officer, and I do what I want to do. And no matter what I do, all I've got to do is pretend like I was in fear of my life, and I can kill you. This is not the America that I've been promised. No man is above the law, except if you're wearing a badge. And anyone that criticizes them, you become public enemy number one. I know for a fact that police listen to this show. I know for a fact that the FOP listens to this show. Now, the point I'm trying to make to you as American citizens, evil can only thrive when good people do nothing. Good people, it's time to stand up. It's not time to get home, because some of us are not making it home. It's time to stand up for the least of my brothers and my sisters and say, we're not going to have this anymore. And we need to sacrifice. That means that you might not need to go to that store. That means that you might not need to spend that money at that white business. We've got to get out of here. Let me leave by quoting Kwame Ture once again. We're told, if we work hard, you'll succeed. But if that were true, black people would own this country. We are oppressed because we are black, not because we are ignorant, not because we are lazy, not because we are stupid and got good rhythm, because we are black. I'll see y'all tomorrow. It's Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices every day, right here on the powerful joynetradio.com.
You've been listening to Black Focus, where we discuss our issues with our solutions and our voices. Join us every weekday afternoon at 1 p.m. on joynetradio.com.
Y'all have a good day.